Naoma's eyes welled up with tears as she hugged her roommate Sarah tightly. "I'll miss you so much," she whispered, her voice trembling. Sarah, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed British girl, smiled and hugged her back. "I'll miss you too, Naoma, but you have to go home and take care of your family. Your father's passing is a huge loss." Naoma nodded, feeling a pang of sadness. She had been studying abroad in London for 3 years, and now she had to return to Nigeria for her father's burial. She had always been close to her father, and his passing felt like a part of her had been ripped away. As she pulled back from the hug, Sarah handed her a small box. "I got you something," she said, her eyes shining with tears. Naoma opened the box to find a beautiful silver necklace with a tiny crystal pendant. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Sarah smiled. "I wanted you to have something to remember me by, and I know you'll be strong and get through this tough time." Naoma hugged her again, feeling grateful for their friendship. "I'll never forget you, Sarah, and I'll come back and visit you soon." As they parted ways, Naoma made her way to the airport, her heart heavy with grief. She had always known that she would have to return to Nigeria eventually, but she had never imagined it would be under such sad circumstances. Naoma arrived at the airport, her mind still reeling from the events of the past few days. She had booked a flight to Lagos, Nigeria, with a layover in Amsterdam. As she checked in and dropped off her luggage, she felt a sense of relief wash over her. She was one step closer to getting home and paying her respects to her father. But as she made her way to the gate, she noticed that the flight was delayed. She checked the board again, her heart sinking. The delay was significant. She would miss her connecting flight in Amsterdam. Panic set in as she rushed to the airline's customer service desk. "Please, can you help me?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to get to Lagos for my father's burial." The representative, a sympathetic-looking woman, nodded. "Let me see what I can do," she said, but after typing away on her computer, she shook her head. "I'm afraid there are no more flights to Lagos today. You'll have to wait until tomorrow." Naoma felt like she'd been punched in the gut. She couldn't miss the burial. She had to be there for her family. She began to cry, feeling helpless and alone in the crowded airport. As she sat down, trying to compose herself, she noticed a man watching her from across the room. He was tall, dark-skinned, and handsome, with piercing brown eyes. He smiled sympathetically, and Naoma felt a sense of comfort wash over her. Naoma wiped away her tears, feeling embarrassed about breaking down in public. But as she looked up, she saw the handsome stranger walking towards her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice deep and soothing. "I saw you crying and thought I'd come over to see if you needed any help." Naoma sniffled, feeling a sense of gratitude towards this stranger. "I missed my flight," she explained. "I need to get to Lagos for my father's burial." The stranger nodded sympathetically. "I'm so sorry," he said. "Losing a loved one is never easy. But don't worry, we'll figure something out. Can I buy you a cup of coffee while we brainstorm?" Naoma hesitated for a moment, but there was something kind and genuine about this stranger that put her at ease. "Okay," she said. "Thank you." As they walked to the airport cafe, Naoma learned that the stranger's name was Kwame. He was a Nigerian businessman who had been on his way to a meeting in London. Over coffee, Kwame listened attentively as Naoma explained her situation. He asked questions and offered words of encouragement. Naoma felt like she had known him for years, not just minutes. As they finished their coffee, Kwame smiled. "I think I can help you," he said. "I have a private jet leaving for Lagos tomorrow. Would you like to join me?" Naoma's eyes widened in shock. "Really?" she asked. You'd do that for me? Kwame nodded. Of course, he said. We Nigerians have to stick together. And besides, I know what it's like to lose someone you love.
Neoma's eyes welled up with tears as she looked at Kwame. I don't know how to thank you, she said, her voice trembling. I'm just a scholarship student from a humble background. I never imagined I'd be flying on a private jet, Kwame smiled warmly. You deserve it, he said. You're a brilliant student, and you're going through a tough time. Just consider it a blessing from God, Neoma nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude towards this stranger who had become her angel. She thought about her family back home, struggling to make ends meet, and her father's passing, which had left a huge void in their lives. As they parted ways, Kwame handed her a card. Meet me at the private jet terminal tomorrow at 10 a.m. he said. And don't worry about a thing. I'll take care of everything. Neoma took the card, feeling like she was dreaming. Was this really happening? Was this handsome, kind-hearted stranger really offering to help her in her time of need? As she made her way back to her hostel, Neoma couldn't help but think about her journey. From a humble background in Nigeria to studying abroad on a scholarship, she had always faced challenges with courage and determination. And now, in her darkest hour, God had sent her an angel in the form of Kwame. Neoma woke up early the next morning, feeling a sense of hope she hadn't felt in days. She got dressed and made her way to the private jet terminal, her heart racing with excitement and gratitude. As she arrived, she saw Kwame waiting for her, looking handsome and elegant in his suit. He smiled and hugged her warmly. Good morning, he said. Are you ready to go home? Neoma nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. Thank you again, she said. I don't know how I can repay you, Kwame waved his hand dismissively. Just consider it a gift from God, he said. Let's go. As they boarded the private jet, Neoma couldn't believe her eyes. The luxurious interior, the comfortable seats, the friendly flight attendants, it was all so surreal. Kwame showed her to her seat and sat down beside her. We'll be taking off soon, he said. Just relax and enjoy the flight. As the jet soared into the sky, Neoma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She knew that she still had a long way to go, but with Kwame by her side, she felt like she could face anything. As they flew over the clouds, Kwame turned to her and asked, Neoma, can I ask you something? Of course, she replied, looking at him curiously. What do you plan to do after your studies? He asked. You're clearly a brilliant student. Do you have any dreams or aspirations? Neoma smiled, feeling a sense of excitement. I want to return to Nigeria and make a difference, she said. I want to help others like me, who come from humble backgrounds and need a chance to succeed. Kwame nodded, his eyes shining with admiration. I have no doubt you'll achieve great things, he said. As the flight continued, Neoma and Kwame talked for hours, sharing stories and laughter. Neoma found herself feeling drawn to Kwame's kind and compassionate nature, and she sensed that he felt the same way about her. As they flew over the African continent, Kwame pointed out the window to the vast savannas and majestic mountains below. Neoma gasped in wonder, feeling a deep connection to the land and its people. Kwame smiled, seeing the look of awe on her face. Africa is a beautiful continent, he said. Full of life and energy, Neoma nodded, feeling a sense of pride. I love my country, she said. I want to make a difference there. Kwame's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. Neoma felt a spark of connection, like they shared a deep understanding. As the flight attendants announced their descent into Lagos, Neoma felt a pang of sadness. She didn't want this journey to end, didn't want to leave Kwame's side, but as they landed and disembarked, Kwame took her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. We'll spend the day together, he said. I'll show you around Lagos. Neoma smiled, feeling a sense of joy. She knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful friendship, one that would change her life forever. Neoma and Kwame spent the morning driving through the bustling streets of Lagos, the sounds and smells of the city overwhelming her senses. But as they approached her village, Neoma's heart began to heavy with grief. They arrived at the village, and Neoma saw her family and friends gathered outside her father's compound. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the burial ceremony, Kwame squeezed her hand, offering silent support. Neoma smiled weakly, grateful for his presence. As they entered the compound, Neoma saw her father's casket, adorned with flowers and traditional cloth. She felt a wave of tears wash over her, but Kwame's grip on her hand kept her grounded. The ceremony began, with traditional songs and dances, followed by a eulogy from the village elder. Neoma listened, tears streaming down her face, as they celebrated her father's life. After the ceremony, they proceeded to the burial ground, where Neoma's father was laid to rest. Neoma felt a sense of closure, knowing that her father was finally at peace. As they left the burial ground, Kwame wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm here for you," and Neoma buried her face in his chest, letting his warmth and comfort envelop her. She knew that she still had a long way to go, but with Kwame by her side, she felt like she could face anything. After the burial, Neoma and Kwame returned to her family's compound, where a reception was held in honor of her father. Neoma was touched by the outpouring of love and support from her community. As they ate and mingled, Kwame stayed by Neoma's side, offering comfort and support. Neoma found herself feeling drawn to him, not just for his kindness, but for the sense of hope he brought into her life. As the day wore on, Kwame pulled Neoma aside and said, "I have to go back to Lagos tomorrow, but I want to make sure you're okay before I leave." Neoma nodded, feeling a pang of sadness. "I'll be fine," she said. "But thank you for everything. You've been a blessing to me." Kwame smiled and took her hand. "You're a strong woman, Neoma. You'll get through this. And I'll be here for you, whenever you need me." Neoma's heart skipped a beat as she looked into his eyes. She saw something there, something that gave her a glimpse of hope for the future. As Kwame left the next day, Neoma felt a sense of emptiness, but also a sense of determination. She knew she had to keep moving forward, for herself and her family, and as she looked at Kwame's phone number, saved in her phone, she smiled, knowing that she could reach out to him anytime. Neoma returned to her studies in London with a renewed sense of purpose. She threw herself into her coursework, determined to make the most of her scholarship and create a better life for herself and her family. But despite her focus on her studies, Neoma couldn't shake the feeling that a part of her was still in Nigeria, with Kwame. She found herself thinking about him constantly, wondering what he was doing and if he was thinking of her too. As the weeks turned into months, Neoma and Kwame kept in touch through phone calls and messages. Neoma cherished their conversations, feeling like she had found a true friend and confidant in Kwame. One day, Kwame asked Neoma if she would like to spend her summer break with him in Lagos. Neoma's heart skipped a beat as she considered the invitation. She had never imagined that she would return to Nigeria so soon, but the thought of spending time with Kwame was too tempting to resist. Neoma accepted the invitation, and Kwame sent her a ticket to Lagos. As she arrived in the city, Neoma felt a sense of excitement and nervousness. She had no idea what the summer would hold, but she knew that she was ready for whatever came next. Kwame met her at the airport, his smile warm and welcoming. "I'm so glad you're here," he said, taking her hand. Neoma smiled back, feeling a sense of belonging. "I'm glad to be here," she said. As they drove through the city, Neoma marveled at the sights and sounds of Lagos. She had never seen the city like this before, and she felt grateful to have Kwame as her guide. Over the next few weeks, Neoma and Kwame spent every spare moment together. They explored the city, trying new foods and drinks, and laughing together like they had known each other for years. Neoma felt like she had found a new lease on life, and she knew that she owed it all to Kwame. He had brought light and laughter into her world, and she couldn't imagine living without him. As the summer drew to a close, Neoma knew that she would have to return to London soon. But she also knew that she would never forget this summer and the man who had made it so special. "Kwame," she said one day, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, "I don't know what I would do without you." Kwame turned to her, his eyes shining with emotion. "You'll never have to find out," he said. "I'll always be here for you, Neoma." Neoma's heart skipped a beat as she looked into his eyes. She knew that she had found something special, something that would last a lifetime. As the summer drew to a close, Neoma knew that she would have to return to London soon. but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving a part of her heart behind in Lagos. With Kwame, one evening, as they sat on the beach watching the stars, Kwame turned to her and said, "Neoma, I have something important to tell you." Neoma's heart skipped a beat as she looked into his eyes. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kwame took a deep breath before speaking. "I think I might be falling in love with you," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Neoma's heart soared as she looked at him. She had been feeling the same way, but she hadn't dared to hope that he felt the same. "Kwame, I feel the same way," she said, her voice filled with joy. Kwame's face lit up with a radiant smile as he pulled her into his arms. "I'm so happy," he whispered, his lips brushing against her ear. As they hugged, Neoma knew that she had found her soulmate in Kwame. She knew that their love would face challenges, but she was ready to face them head-on, as long as they were together. Over the next few days, Neoma and Kwame spent every spare moment together, basking in the glow of their newfound love. They knew that they would have to navigate the challenges of a long-distance relationship, but they were determined to make it work. As Neoma boarded the plane to return to London, Kwame held her close, his eyes shining with tears. "I'll miss you so much," he whispered. Neoma smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. "I'll be back soon," she said. "And we'll be together again." Neoma returned to London, her heart full of joy and her mind buzzing with thoughts of Kwame. She knew that they would have to navigate the challenges of a long-distance relationship, but she was determined to make it work. As she settled back into her routine, Neoma and Kwame made sure to stay in touch, talking and texting each other every day. They shared stories about their days, their hopes and dreams, and their fears and insecurities. Despite the distance between them, Neoma felt closer to Kwame than ever before. She knew that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle, and she was grateful for the technology that allowed them to stay connected. But as the weeks turned into months, Neoma began to feel the strain of being apart from Kwame. She missed his smile, his laugh, and his warm embrace. She missed the way he made her feel like she was home. Kwame, too, felt the strain of their separation. He missed Neoma's bright spirit, her infectious laugh, and her beautiful smile. He missed the way she made him feel like he was the only man in the world. Despite the distance between them, they knew that their love was worth fighting for. They made plans to see each other again, to spend more time together and strengthen their bond, and so, they counted down the days until they could be together again, their love growing stronger with each passing moment. Months went by, and Neoma and Kwame's love continued to grow stronger despite the distance. They talked every day, sharing their thoughts, dreams, and fears. They sent each other care packages, filled with little reminders of their love. Finally, the day arrived when Neoma would return to Lagos for a visit. Kwame was overjoyed, counting down the hours until he could hold her in his arms again. As Neoma stepped off the plane, Kwame was there, waiting for her with a bouquet of flowers and a heart full of love. They embraced, holding each other tightly, tears of joy streaming down their faces. Their reunion was like a dream come true. They spent their days exploring the city, holding hands and laughing together. They spent their nights cuddled up together, watching the stars and talking about their future. One evening, as they sat on the beach, watching the sunset, Kwame turned to Neoma and said, "I have something important to ask you." And Neoma's heart skipped a beat as she looked into his eyes. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kwame took a deep breath before speaking. "Neoma, from the moment I met you, I knew that you were special. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy streaming down her face, Neoma nodded eagerly. "Yes, yes, a million times yes," she exclaimed. As Kwame placed the ring on her finger, Neoma knew that she had found her forever love. She knew that their journey together would be filled with ups and downs, but she was ready to face whatever came their way, as long as she had Kwame by her side. Neoma and Kwame's wedding was a beautiful blend of Nigerian and British cultures. The ceremony was held in Lagos, with friends and family from both countries in attendance. Neoma looked stunning in her traditional Nigerian attire, her hair styled perfectly and her makeup flawless. Kwame wore a tailored suit, his eyes shining with happiness as he gazed at his bride. As they exchanged vows, Neoma and Kwame promised to love and cherish each other, through thick and thin, in sickness and in health. The reception was a lively celebration of their love, with music, dancing, and plenty of food and drink. Neoma and Kwame shared their first dance as husband and wife, swaying to the music in each other's arms. As the night wore on, Neoma and Kwame were showered with love and well-wishes from their guests. They knew that their marriage would be a journey, but they were ready to face whatever came their way, together. After the wedding, Neoma and Kwame spent a blissful honeymoon in the Maldives, relaxing on the beach and enjoying each other's company. As they sat on the beach, watching the sunset, Neoma turned to Kwame and said, "I'm so grateful for that missed flight. If I hadn't met you, I don't know where I'd be today." Kwame smiled, taking her hand. "I'm grateful too," he said. "I love you, Neoma. I love you too, Kwame," she replied, and as they sealed their love with a kiss. Neoma knew that she had found her forever home in Kwame's arms.